Hi, I'm Allison Ellis of Floral Artistry. Thanks for tuning in. It is middle of winter here in Vermont, so I have abandoned my studio to come inside by the fireplace to talk to you a little bit about dealing with customer complaints and dealing with difficult customers. I think they are inherently two different types of situations. So the customer complaint comes after you've already worked with them, you've delivered something that is not to their standard, or they had an unrealistic expectation of something and you're just kind of stuck now in the situation where you've done nothing wrong, but you have a negative review or negative feedback to deal with. And then there's the difficult customer, which to me is, someone who's, say, a repeat customer at your shop, or if you're like me, where you don't have a flower shop, but you do, just weddings and events, you have a customer who's with you for this like extended period of time, like many months you're working with this customer. And so you have these repeated interactions, and maybe this person's trying to micromanage or doesn't totally trust that you understand their vision. And so for whatever reason, they become a difficult customer. I think one person's difficult customer is another person's ideal client. So it's really a matter of perception as to what makes someone a difficult customer, in your opinion. And I think a lot of times it comes down to the fact that the customer sort of makes you feel inferior or like they don't trust you. And that makes them, fall under this category of difficult customer. So first I want to talk about customer complaints and give you 3 tips on like the very first steps of how to deal with a customer complaint. So first of all, our business would be nothing without our customers. I think we can all agree it'd be easier to just, make whatever we want and not have to fit the customer's sort of ideal or appease the customer's, sensibility. But then we'd have a hobby and not a business, and we would have to get a job doing something else, and we wouldn't get to spend nearly as much time being creative with flowers. So the customer is essential, and we cannot please all of them all the time, but we always try to do our best, which is why when someone does complain or give us negative feedback on, a website, it cuts us down. It cuts us down so hard. It hurts when someone isn't happy, because we don't just want them to be happy, we want them to be thrilled. So when they're not only not thrilled, but they're unhappy, it hurts. It can undermine your confidence, and it can really just kind of put you in a funk where all day you're thinking about this complaint. Maybe it's all week, maybe it's all month. Sometimes 2 years later, you're like, oh, I remember when that person complained about, such and such. I am never going to let that happen again. So the customer complaint is something that we all take seriously. Whether we handle it appropriately or not is another question, but I know we all take these complaints to heart. So when you have a customer complaint, there's this quote from Pinterest that's been floating around, and I think it's a great way to sort of frame this whole conversation about customer complaints. And it's something along the lines of, your reaction to a situation literally has the power to change the situation. So if a customer is complaining, but you rise to the occasion and treat them with like super awesome customer service about the complaint, you may have the ability to turn that customer around and say, hey, you know what? I feel good now about, how this is all going down. So first tip out of 3, number 1 is you have to recognize the person's point of view who's complaining. You don't have to agree with their point of view, but you have to try to put yourself in their shoes. Just try to look at the situation from their side, because without doing that, you have no idea like really what this complaint is about. It may be about more than that the arrangement wasn't, big enough, something like that. It might be about something really that's like more serious or more sensitive that you may be able to like tap into and really win this customer over. And so number 1 is the point of view. And number 2 is handling the complaint in a totally professional manner. So this is not an option. It's not an option to be professional or to like snip and backtalk and be like, oh, no one else has ever complained about that before. That doesn't help anything, and it's like super not professional. So it's not an option to be professional, it is a job requirement. If you're not going to be professional, then you shouldn't deal with customers at all. You have to respect them and really treat them like you actually care. And you actually do have to care because it's important that they're heard and that you handle them appropriately. So you're recognizing their point of view, you're handling them professionally, you're treating them with respect because that's how they're going to treat you with respect, only if you treat them that way. And number 3 is you've got to handle any sort of negative interaction with your business in a super timely manner, because just like any kind of argument you have with your spouse or a friend, they say something that like hits below the belt and then they're like, oh, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have said that, that was out of line. You can forgive it, but if it lingers, if they say something and it lingers with you, you start to get fired up and start to come up with, other things that you're thinking about to like kind of come back at them with. Don't let your customers fester. If there's a complaint, handle it. Make it a priority. Find someone in your company who's the best at handling the complaints, and because not everybody is great at it, and put them in charge of, making sure the customer is dealt with and has a satisfactory outcome, because we really do want to try to resolve any kind of complaints to the best of our ability. So those are the 3 things you want to do before writing or calling anybody, is really thinking about these 3 pieces. And when we're talking about difficult customers, again, these are a matter of perception. There's no like category of difficult that is like a blanket statement. Everybody has something that's different. I had someone who I loved a few years ago who a lot of people would probably call a difficult customer. She just was very particular. She worked for a high-end designer as a buyer. She knew what she wanted. She knew colors. She knew style. She had some really specific types of flowers she wanted. And, as a florist, my job is to say, I will do my best, but I cannot promise that we will get that exact rose in that exact color, but I'm going to do my best. Lucky for me and her, everything came in and was beautiful and came out exactly as it should have. But, she's really wanting to make sure I understand what her vision is, and I'm trying to really manage her expectation. And so together it became something where, we're sort of dancing around like, I understand what you want. I'm going to do my best. I promise, even if that particular peach rose doesn't come in, we're going to have a beautiful wedding because I know exactly what it is you want. So letting go and trusting a designer can sometimes be really hard for certain people, and you have to be able to accept that and handle that. So with that being said, I've got another quotable for you, and this one I think is worth getting a pen and paper for, or like tattooing it to your wrist. And this is from my husband's uncle Mosey, who we just visited in LA, and it's something that really touches me in my core. So it's as simple as, what you allow, you encourage. What you allow, you encourage. So this is great for any relationship, but especially a sort of long-term customer relationship. It's important for us to treat people with respect, reply promptly to, all of their emails, all of their messages. But we also have to set an expectation. You can't necessarily email me 500 times with 500 revisions. I'm not going to like update your proposal every single time you add like one boutonniere. And just letting them know, like, hey, I've got the notes and I'll update it, 8 weeks before your wedding, 4 weeks before your wedding, whatever it is, you'll get your final proposal and I'll have all of these notes on it. I'm making the changes as we go. You can trust me. I'm on top of this. But not necessarily, sending them an updated proposal like every week with every little change that they make, because you're going to make yourself crazy. So you got to kind of protect yourself with this, what you allow, you encourage piece of things. So that's one way to deal with someone that you view as being difficult, is actually dealing with them and setting the tone for how this communication is going to go for, the duration of our relationship. Now, another quote that I think is like so important, like to me, this came from my father-in-law actually, and he's a communications professor, so I think he knows what he's talking about. what is your intention? That is something to ask yourself anytime you're having a conflict or even just setting a goal for yourself. What is your intention? What do you want the outcome to be? So if you're about to handle a customer complaint or email a difficult customer, what is your intention? How do you want them to feel? How do you want to feel? What do you want to have actually happen as a result of this communication? Because if you can keep that in the forefront of your mind, it's really going to help shape what you say and how you say it in such a really profound way. Like, what is your intention? Keep that in mind always when dealing with complaints or difficult customers. When we're talking about, putting a pin in some different points, I think when we're dealing with complaints, there are a few things that we can do to, really help craft a message, whether it's on the phone or in an email. So 3 more tips for you are: 1, keep it short. Short, short, short. Short is always better than lots and lots of words. It's partially just due to how our brains are now wired with so many different pieces of social media everywhere, but the shorter something is, the more you respond to it. More apt you are to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to read this right now because it's short. The longer it is, you're like, oh, I do not have time for that right now. So keep your reply short. Write a reply and walk away from it, come back, reread it like an editor, get rid of any ifs, ands, buts, thans, ands that you don't need in there, and any sentences that are not in line with your intention, how you really want this to come across. And then you're going to find your message is shorter, more to the point, and more effective because fewer words are better. And so I say make it almost like a challenge to yourself, like, what are the fewest number of words I need to communicate this point? And then you will have a greater success in terms of really communicating in a more solid way with a customer, especially an unhappy customer. They don't want to read a big, long paragraph. They want you to get to the point. And so that's number 1, keeping it short. Number 2 is don't apologize if you didn't actually do something wrong. It's really, really important to keep that in mind. I really do not believe in apologizing if you don't think you're wrong, but you can do this instead. So maybe you don't say, oh, I'm sorry that arrangement wasn't big enough for you, because it was to value, and it was quite big in your opinion. I think that what you should do instead is say something like, I'm sorry to hear that you're unhappy, or I'm sorry that you feel that way, as sort of the intro to your sentence, just to let them know that you are sorry. You may not be sorry for what you did, but you're sorry to hear this. I'm sorry to hear this. It at least gives a tone of compassion, empathy, a tone of understanding, which, let's face it, most of the time, if you have ever complained about something, or if you really get to the heart of anyone who's ever complained to you, they just want to be heard, they want to be acknowledged, and maybe you can't actually fix anything that you did wrong for them, especially if it's a wedding. Unfortunately, it's so hard to fix something after the wedding day. But just acknowledging them and saying, I hear you and I'm taking to heart what you're saying, it can be enough sometimes for people. So just keep that in mind. Don't apologize, though, if you didn't do something wrong. Really, really don't believe in doing that. And third is really keeping in mind that if you did mess up, you really did mess up, you gotta own it. You gotta own it. Because if you did mess up, you owe them an apology. You may owe them a refund, or you may owe them, a replacement arrangement. But if you messed up, you gotta own it. Now, I don't think you should completely be self-deprecating, oh, I'm the worst. I shouldn't even be in the flower business anymore. But I do think that if you know that you did something wrong, you really ought to own it and give that person what they're looking for, which is a genuine apology and some way to rectify the situation. Because, we do mess up sometimes. I hate to say that because we don't like to think it, but we are human and we have a lot of variables that don't always work in our favor, like product availability, quality of the product, the color of the rose, and it's just something that no matter how hard we try, sometimes we're kind of up against some just obstacles that don't always make it so easy to do exactly what we intend to do. And sometimes we just mess up. Sometimes you didn't write something down. Sometimes your staff messes up. And we got to own it and we got to move on from it, because you got to forgive yourself if you do mess up. So keep that in mind. If you are somebody who beats up on yourself or gets really, really disheartened by, anything that maybe doesn't go right in your business, you got to toughen up a little bit. You got to roll with it and move forward, because there are a lot more things that you do positive than negative. Guarantee it, or otherwise you wouldn't have a business anymore. So if you're ever feeling really down after some negative feedback, especially negative feedback that you feel like you totally do not deserve, you got to brush it off. Go into, your online reviews on Wedding Wire or The Knot or wherever, and pull out your shoebox full of thank you notes and just read through them and remind yourself of all the things that people have loved about working with you and all the really good jobs you've done, to just sort of maybe bring you out of that funk of beating up on yourself, because you got to move on when something doesn't work out well. So do your best, keep moving forward, keep making beautiful arrangements, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. 'Cause I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Just trying to keep my customers satisfied.